Hello everybody and welcome back to another Overwatch League 2021 roster breakdown video. Today I will be going over the Chengdu Hunters. They finished the 2020 season with an 8-14 record and a -14 differential. Definitely a step down from where they were in 2019, even though 2019 was an up and down season for them. They still looked pretty good at times. Their record was a lot better than what they had this past season, but it was a rough road for them in 2020. So how has this team bounced back? What is this team looking like now? And what are they going to do going forward to be the competitive team that they want to be? One of the first main changes I want to bring up is the fact that they have brought back head coach Rui. Now, Rui, R-U-I, whatever you want to say, he was the head coach for the team in 2019. Was not the coach for 2020. I believe he had a health issue that he had to step down as the coach. But he is now back as their head coach. So, in theory, they have a return of their star head coach. And so he's back to this team. They are back to the leader that led them to that kind of success back in 2019. How will that help this team out, and how will they fare now that he is back in the lineup? So let's start by taking a look at the tanks for the Chengdu Hunters. To start, we have the main tanks. There are two main tanks on this roster. We have the return of the Yada Chad Among, and we have next to him now Gaga. Now, I think that Gaga is going to be the starter for this team. Everything I have heard about Gaga, I have not watched a lot of Gaga, but everything I've heard about Gaga is that he is incredible, and that his wrecking ball might be better than even that of Among. And part of the reason why I think Gaga is going to start is also because I think Gaga just has the deeper hero pool. He is obviously very good on ball. Among is as well, and I think if it's a meta where you know you're gonna have ball and you're gonna run a ball entirely, there's a very good chance Among becomes their purely ball player, even though Gaga is good at ball as well. But if they know they might need to switch over to the Winston or the Reinhardt or the Orisa, I think that Gaga is going to be the player they go with for the majority of those moments. Among could play some of those. His Reinhardt has had some moments. His Orisa is okay, but I think that Gaga is going to be the star tank player for this team. He was on Team CC. Team CC won the gauntlet for Asia in 2020. They got second in Season 2 of Contenders China. They won the first season of Contenders China. They've beaten teams like T1. They've beaten teams like Billy Gaming and other tournaments. This is a very good team that has produced a ton of players who are going to be playing at the Overwatch League level this season. I think the competition between Among and Gaga will be interesting, but I really do think you should keep your eyes out for Gaga to potentially be the starter for this team going into 2021. He is a very good player. I think one of the most underrated players coming into the season, maybe not underrated, one of the most overlooked players. He is going to be better than I think people give him credit for, so definitely keep an eye out for him. In the off-tank role, we are going to primarily see Elsa playing. He is the only off-tank on this roster that is on the roster full-time. Late Young is also still with the team. He is on a two-way contract. I expect him to really only come in if there is a Zarya heavy meta, like we saw last season with the Chengdu comp, the ball Zarya composition, where Late Young was really, really good in that composition. He's a very good player at the Zarya. It's his signature hero, and so I do think it is a very good look for Late Young to be on the Zarya whenever they need him, but they're going to rely primarily on Elsa, and I think Elsa's pretty good. His D.Va is definitely his signature hero. His Sigma's not bad. I think that works pretty well for them. I don't think that it's going to be a weakness, that off-tank role. You have your Zarya specialist if you need it. You have Elsa for everything else. I do think it'll be pretty good. Overall, this is a decent tank line. I don't love this tank line in the way that, I love a tank line like what the Guangzhou Charge usually have. The Hangzhou Spark, I think, a really good tank line. I think that this is going to be a better tank line than what it was last season. I do think Gaga provides an upgrade. I think he gives you more flexibility. You have all the pieces you need to kind of run a team that you think works. And so I think this is one of the biggest improvements they could have made, was getting that greater flexibility at the tank role, something that I do not think they really had much of last season, because it was basically Among and maybe Ating if you felt like he could do something, but a lot of the time they never really ran him, so they ultimately went with somebody who I think is better in Gaga, and who can actually even play a lot of the same heroes that many of the, you know, fans of Among would really appreciate. His ball is very good. His Reinhardt's very good. So I do think that it is a huge upgrade for them to have somebody who's more flexible, can play more of those tanks. And I think that is one of the things that will really elevate this Chengdu Hunters roster, is that next step up for them in that tank play. They're finally getting a main tank who I think can replace Among, which they've been trying to do since 2019, and they were never able to do it. I think finally Gaga is the guy who can head this team and who can lead this team as the main tank to greater success than what Among could. This is not a bash on Among. Among's Wrecking Ball was game changing, and it was an incredible. He was arguably the best. Not even arguably. He is the best Wrecking Ball we've ever seen in the Overwatch League. The only problem is that, as a result of being so good on one hero and not great on other heroes, it really limited the way the Chengdu Hunters could play. Now they have more freedom, and I think that will make them a better team overall. Moving on to the support line, there's a couple interesting things here. One of them is, of course, that they traded away Molly to the Shanghai Dragons. He is no longer with this team. I thought Molly was very good last season. I'm kind of surprised that they let him go. I've heard some great things about his replacement, Faraway 1987, but to me it seems odd to let Molly go when he was such a good player for this team last season, and I thought he was one of the biggest reasons why they found so much success last season at times, because he really was a star flex DPS player. The other interesting part of this support line is that Yveltal, though returning, is also on a two-way contract. I really like Yveltal. I think Yveltal's a very good player. I think he's a really good main support. I'm surprised that they have him on a two-way contract, and they're opting to go instead with Nisha, formerly Illusion. You may know him as that name. He played for Billy Billy Gaming this past year. He was not with Team CC. And it's an interesting move, in my opinion, to make this change, to go from Yveltal, who I think is very good and who's been very good, especially on the Mercy. His Mercy's very good. His Lucio is pretty good. To make that change over to somebody like Nisha, and to not even give Yveltal a full contract. Putting him on a two-way contract to me is very interesting. I think there's a very good chance Yveltal is the person they keep running with in the future. I just think that Yveltal is a very good player, and I think he has that synergy already with a lot of these players. Nisha comes in, does not have that pre-existing support line synergy with Faraway 1987, as he also comes from Team CC. So it is interesting, and it is a little odd to see it. Maybe Nisha is really, really good. I haven't heard a ton of things about Nisha being incredible. I'm sure he's good. If they're going in with him fully, I'm sure he's a very good player. I just have not heard a lot about him, whereas Faraway, I've heard a decent amount about him. And I think he is somebody who is going to be a pretty good replacement for Molly. I don't know if he'll be better than Molly. I thought Molly was the best part of this team last season. A lot of people would say it was Leave. People might say it was Jinmu. Some people would say it was Among. You know, everyone always has their opinions. I think Molly was the best part of this team last season. The fact that they let him go, to me, is very interesting. Will Faraway be able to fill his shoes? I'd say there's a pretty good chance, but I need to see it first. I need to see him in action before I'm really ready to kind of give all of my former Molly stonks into Faraway, because I don't know enough about him as a player, and I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have with some of these changes to the Chengdu Hunters roster, which are pretty noticeable. But a new support line, I'm very intrigued by it. Nisha, I think, has to really perform at a high level because of the fact that Yveltal is there on that two-way contract waiting to just take his spot back, be the starter for the team. Nisha, he knows he has the ability to, lose that spot. So he needs to be the really big player. Farway doesn't have that same pressure. If he doesn't do well, they might have to look to get somebody in free agency potentially, but he doesn't have that pressure of somebody behind him on the roster who could take his position. And I think that will be something that is interesting to watch to see how Farway plays. He is the player on this support line I'm most interested in just because of that storyline of Molly being sent away despite being a really good player last season, and they bring in somebody new. Can he replace and fill the hole that this star had and has no left behind? That to me is the thing I am most looking out for. Let's take a look now, though, at the DPS, because this DPS line is pretty interesting. So there's two returning pieces, Jinmu and Leave both returning. Bacon Jack no longer with the team. He has retired to go pursue other things. But Jinmu, of course we know Jinmu, his Pharah play, his Genji play, very, very good. His flex DPS is kind of his specialty. A huge part of the success of the Chengdu Hunters last season in the Chengdu meta was because of Jinmu's Genji play, being able to really just invest into him and just letting him pop off and do whatever he wanted to do was a huge part of why this team succeeded. He spent most of the season playing alongside Leave. Of course, another kind of flex DPS player, hybrid hit scan player. He can play your Tracer. He can play your Doomfist and stuff. And he can play your Ashe and a little bit your Widowmaker, but it's not his specialty. If you want that long-range hit scan, last year that would have been Bacon Jack. This year, it would be Jimmy who's going to be their hit scan long-range sniper player. He's your Ashe, he's your Widowmaker. He might even be your McCree. Leave's McCree isn't bad, so that one maybe you stick with Leave for, but when you need that double hit scan meta, you're most likely going to have Jimmy and Leave in, but in general, you can expect to see Jimmy coming in for those sniper spots when they need that going on. The most interesting player on this team is Kaneki, because Kaneki is another flex DPS player. His kind of signature heroes are Pharah, who Jinmu is a really good Pharah, so I don't see a ton of situations where you take Jinmu out for the Pharah. He's also known for his Tracer play, which I don't see many instances where you would take Leave out, when I think Leave's Tracer is very good. But he's also very good at Sombra, and I feel like that's going to be Kaneki's position on this team. I don't think Jinmu or Leave are particularly strong with Sombra. I don't think either of them have looked very good on it. Jimmy is your long-range hit scan guy. He's not going to be playing your Sombra. I really think that is what Kaneki's role is for this team. They needed somebody who could play Sombra. They needed to make sure that there was no area on that DPS line where they were not able to play the heroes that they needed. I think that's been a problem for Chengdu in the past. They have had limited hero pools across their roster. Amon could really only play ball at a high level. You could get some okay Reinhardt play out of him, but if you needed Winston, you had to take him out. If you needed Orisa, he could play it, but it wasn't amazing. Jinmu, he can play your Genji really well, he can play your Pharah really well, but that kind of is it. He can play your Mei, but that was really it. And you had Bacon Jack, who was really only a sniper player, and Leave, who had some heroes that he's really good at. His Tracer, his Ashe, his McCree, pretty good, but he wasn't going to be your really, really good star-studded hit scan player. So they kind of fix those problems. They bring in another dedicated hit scan sniper player in Jimmy. They bring in a solid secondary flex DPS player who can run that Sombra if they really need it. And I think that really helps this team out a lot. There aren't really many holes on this Chengdu Hunters roster. I think the biggest problem for this team in the past was always that they just felt like a team that had some players who were really good at certain heroes, but they were only good at those heroes. The team never felt like a team that could play anything whenever you needed it, and I don't really feel that problem as much anymore. I think that the biggest thing to note about the Chengdu Hunters is that they upgraded where they needed to upgrade the most. Elsa could play what he needed to play on the off tank role, so he's their off tank. Their support line, while I think was strong and I think was pretty good, they found a way to kind of bolster it in some younger talent, and they feel good, presumably, about the way this team is going to go in the future with that support line. And the big changes to the DPS lineup where they made sure that they can play the Sombra, which they've never really had in the past, a great Sombra. I don't even know who played Sombra for this team before. I could have a bad memory. I feel like it was probably Jinmu, and I don't think it was very good if it was him. It was either him or Leave, and either way, it was not a very good Sombra because I don't remember it at all. So I can't imagine it was a very memorable Sombra. So I think that's kind of the biggest place where this team really made sure to upgrade, was to make sure that they have the things that they struggled with in the past, and they have more flexibility, and they're not going to be stuck in this one type of composition that they can never break out of. They can have different looks, they can run different compositions, and I think that's going to really help this team out a lot. I'd say my biggest concern is the support line. You have a main tank you can fall back on with Among if Gaga doesn't work out, and yeah, you want to revert back to using ball comps primarily, but you know how good his ball is, and considering ball is going to be meta most likely at the start of the season, or there's a good chance it's meta at the start of the season, you know you're getting a really strong main tank, and arguably the best player at that hero right off the bat. You're pairing him alongside Elsa, who you know you believe in, who's been proven so far, and so you don't have to feel super worried about that. But the support line, you don't have a second flex support to fall back on. That's not something you can rely on, because there isn't one. You only have the one, and if he doesn't do well, then you're kind of screwed, unless you find somebody else in free agency or wherever to kind of bolster that, where you are not doing super well right now. So I think that is my biggest concern, is just what is going to happen with the support line. Do they have enough consistency out of Faraway 1987 to justify only having the one flex support player, when everywhere else on the roster they have backups for every single role, even if those backups are two-way players? Right? They have two off tanks, even if one's a two-way player. They have two main supports, even if one's a two-way player. They only have the one flex support. So Faraway 1987 has to work, because if he doesn't work, this team is going to struggle a lot. Early on, especially, if they can't get their support line right from the beginning, they're going to fall behind, and it's going to be the same cycle of Chengdu that we've seen in the past. Those are my thoughts on this Chengdu Hunters roster. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. I want to thank every single person out there who subscribed recently. If you just found this channel, hello, thank you. You're all great. You bumped me up to 200 subscribers, which is pretty cool. I mean, I don't do this for the subscribers, but it's nice to see it happen. So yeah, that's always a fun thing. But yeah, that's it for me. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.